The stage was set. A packed auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Elon Musk leaned casually into his mic, a confident smirk playing on his lips. Dressed in his signature black jacket and jeans, he had the undivided attention of the audience. This was his world, where he spoke, and people listened. Tonight, he was at a high-profile tech summit, talking about innovation, ambition, and the future of humanity. But somewhere along the way, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "You know, some people just have a reputation for being breathtaking," Elon said, pausing for effect. A few chuckles echoed in the hall. "But, I haven't exactly seen them designing rockets or building AI, have you?" The laughter grew louder. It wasn't a direct call out, but everyone in the room knew who he was referring to: Keanu Reeves. The Hollywood legend. The internet's favorite actor. The man who could do no wrong in the eyes of his fans. For Elon, it was just another offhand comment. A joke. A moment of light humor in an otherwise tech-heavy discussion. But what he didn't realize was that someone in the audience was live streaming the entire event. And within minutes, the internet had caught fire. Twitter exploded. Reddit threads piled up. YouTube was already filling with reaction videos. Elon Musk mocks Keanu Reeves. Did Musk just throw shade at John Wick? Billionaire versus the nicest guy in Hollywood, who wins? The backlash was immediate. Because Keanu wasn't just another actor. He was a symbol of humility, kindness, and quiet strength. A man who had been through unimaginable personal loss but never let it change his outlook on life. He wasn't flashy. He didn't seek attention. And yet, wherever he went, respect followed. As the internet erupted, Keanu was completely unaware. He was on the other side of the world, wrapping up a late-night shoot for his upcoming film. The moment he stepped off set, his phone vibrated. A message from his assistant. "Hey, you're trending, again." Keanu frowned slightly, tapping the link. The video played. He watched in silence, his expression unreadable. When it ended, he exhaled slowly, a small smirk forming at the corner of his lips. He wasn't angry. If anything, he found it amusing. He wasn't one for online drama. He had never been the type to fire back at critics or engage in public disputes. But something about this moment felt different. Maybe it was the way people were rallying behind him. Maybe it was the fact that, despite all his achievements, someone like Musk still felt the need to take a shot at him. He thought for a moment. Then, without overthinking it, he pulled out his phone and typed a single sentence. Something simple. Something direct. Something that would remind the world exactly who he was. Seconds later, the tweet went live. Breathtaking? Maybe. But respect isn't measured in algorithms. The internet went wild. Replies flooded in instantly. Keanu just humbled a billionaire in one sentence. John Wick doesn't miss, even on Twitter. Elon, you better sit this one out. And just like that, the tide had turned. The comment that started as a light joke was now a full-blown internet moment. Back in his office, Musk saw the tweet. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Normally, he'd have a witty comeback ready in seconds. But this time, he hesitated. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure if he'd won this round. Musk tapped his fingers against the desk, staring at the tweet on his screen. He had been in the spotlight for years, used to controversy, used to people criticizing him. But this felt different. Keanu Reeves wasn't just a random critic. He wasn't a business rival or a journalist with an agenda. He was one of the most universally loved figures in the world, and right now, the internet was celebrating his response like it was the final scene of an action movie. Elon leaned back in his chair, letting out a breath. His team had already started damage control, preparing statements, strategizing the next move, but he knew the reality. This wasn't something he could spin. The internet had chosen its side. His phone buzzed. A text from a close friend. Dude. Keanu actually got you. Might want to sit this one out. Elon let out a small chuckle. Maybe he had underestimated him. But Musk wasn't the type to back down. If anything, this only made him more interested in Keanu. Who was he, really? Sure, he had the public image, humble, kind, the guy who gave up his subway seat, the action hero who trained for months just to make a fight scene look perfect. But Elon had spent his life dissecting people, looking beyond the surface. And something about Keanu Reeves intrigued him now more than ever. He glanced at his computer screen, quickly opening a few tabs. Articles, interviews, old clips. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he scrolled through, reading, watching, absorbing. Keanu's life wasn't an easy one. His father left when he was young. He moved constantly as a kid, never really having a stable home. His best friend passed away. Then, years later, he lost the woman he loved, followed by the child they had been expecting. And yet, through all of it, he remained the same, kind, respectful, grounded. Elon sat back, rubbing his chin. He respected resilience. He admired people who overcame. But what puzzled him was how Keanu had never let bitterness take over. Most people who went through tragedies like that, they changed. They became hardened. Cynical. But Keanu? He was different. As Elon kept reading, his thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. His assistant poked her head in. "You might want to see this," she said, placing a tablet in front of him. Elon glanced down. Another tweet was going viral, this time from a well-known journalist. Musk versus Reeves is the perfect example of two different kinds of success. One built on innovation, the other on humanity. Which one matters more? Elon exhaled sharply. So this wasn't just about a joke anymore. It had turned into something bigger, a conversation about values, about power, about what really defined influence. And right now, it seemed like Keanu was coming out as the stronger figure. Meanwhile, in a quiet part of Los Angeles, Keanu sat on his couch, sipping a cup of tea, his dog curled up beside him. His phone kept vibrating, but he had put it on silent. He had seen the reactions, read the comments, and while some of it amused him, he had no intention of turning this into something bigger. But the world had other plans. His agent had already called 3 times. His publicist was drafting responses. Studios were watching closely. Because whether he wanted it or not, he was now part of something much larger than a simple Twitter exchange. A friend texted him. "Musk's people are looking into you. Just a heads up." Keanu stared at the message for a moment, then smiled to himself. He had spent his whole life avoiding drama, staying out of feuds, but here he was, dragged into an online battle he never asked for. Still, he wasn't worried. Musk might have power. He might have billions, companies, influence. But Keanu had something else. Something money couldn't buy. And the whole world was watching to see how this would unfold. The night was restless. While Keanu had set his phone aside, letting the internet play its games, Elon found himself unable to look away. The tweets, the headlines, the endless discussions, it was fascinating, in a way. He had seen social media storms before, but this one felt different. Maybe because, for once, he wasn't the one controlling the narrative. His team had already drafted a response. Something light, something humorous, an attempt to diffuse the situation without admitting defeat. But Musk wasn't sure he wanted to send it. Instead, he leaned back, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. Why was this bothering him? He had gone up against world leaders, rival CEOs, entire industries. He had been mocked, criticized, praised, and idolized. A single tweet from an actor shouldn't have thrown him off balance. And yet, it had. The internet had drawn a line. On one side was Elon, brilliant, unpredictable, always pushing the limits of technology. On the other was Keanu, humble, timeless, a reminder that success wasn't just about money or innovation. The world had turned this into more than a viral moment. It had become a battle of ideals. Musk glanced at his phone again. A new notification. This time, it wasn't a tweet or a news alert. It was a direct message. From Keanu. He raised an eyebrow. For a moment, he hesitated. Then, curiosity got the better of him, and he opened it. No hard feelings. But you should know, not everything is about winning. It was simple. Direct. And somehow, it irritated him more than anything else. Elon stared at the message, debating whether to respond. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He started typing, then deleted it. Started again. Deleted. He wasn't used to second-guessing himself, but this was new territory. Meanwhile, outside the world of tweets and headlines, something else was happening. Keanu's unexpected response had sparked a deeper conversation. People weren't just debating who had the better comeback, they were questioning what real influence looked like. Tech enthusiasts defended Musk, arguing that innovation and progress required a certain level of ruthlessness. Others pointed to Keanu, saying that respect, humility, and kindness were just as powerful as money and intelligence. Podcasts were dissecting it. Articles were analyzing it. Late-night talk show hosts were cracking jokes about it. And somewhere in the chaos, an unexpected voice entered the conversation. A former SpaceX engineer, someone who had worked closely with Musk in the early days, tweeted out a thread. People love to talk about Elon's genius. And yeah, he's brilliant. But let me tell you something, when you work under someone like that, you learn fast that intelligence isn't the same as wisdom. The thread went viral instantly. Others started chiming in. Former employees, industry insiders, people who had seen both sides of Musk, the visionary, and the man behind the curtain. Some defended him, praising his drive and ambition. Others told stories of impossible demands, of sleepless nights, of moments where progress came at the cost of people. The conversation was no longer about a joke or a tweet. It was about something deeper, about power, about legacy, about the kind of impact people leave behind. And Elon knew it. He felt it shifting beneath him. The control slipping, the narrative twisting into something he hadn't planned for. For the first time in years, he wasn't the one leading the conversation. And that realization was more unsettling than he cared to admit. Elon sat in his office, the glow of his monitor illuminating his face. The weight of the situation was settling in. He wasn't just dealing with another online backlash, this was different. It was spreading like wildfire, and the longer he stayed silent, the more it grew beyond his control. His reputation had weathered storms before, but this wasn't about technology, business, or even controversy. It was about perception. Keanu's tweet, short and effortless, had planted a seed in people's minds. The world had started drawing comparisons, not just between two men but between two mindsets. And Elon, for all his brilliance, was suddenly being framed as the one who didn't quite get it. His team had sent over multiple drafts of potential responses. He read them, considered them, but nothing felt right. If he tried to turn it into a joke, it would seem dismissive. If he went defensive, it would only fuel the fire. If he ignored it, he risked looking like he had no response at all. Then, another notification popped up. A new interview clip was making the rounds. This time, it wasn't from a journalist or a celebrity. It was Keanu himself. The video started simply, an interviewer mentioning the viral moment. Keanu smiled, his usual calm demeanor unchanged. The interviewer asked him if he had anything more to say about Musk's comment. Keanu shrugged. "I don't know, man," he said with a small chuckle. "I don't take things personally. But, you know, I think respect is one of the most valuable things we can give each other. Whether you're a billionaire or a barista, it doesn't really cost anything." That was it. A single sentence. And yet, it spread like wildfire. People latched onto it, dissecting every word. The debate had shifted again. Now, it wasn't just about Musk and Keanu. It was about values, about the way power and influence shaped how people treated each other. Elon clenched his jaw. He could feel it slipping further out of his grasp. He needed to do something. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, tensions were growing. Tech journalists were reaching out to former employees, asking about Elon's leadership. Hollywood insiders were speculating on how Keanu had managed to maintain such a pristine reputation in an industry known for scandals and egos. And in the middle of it all, the internet was split. Some hardcore Musk supporters doubled down, defending him with statistics, achievements, and the argument that innovation required a certain level of detachment. But others were beginning to see him differently. Not as the genius visionary they had admired, but as someone who had miscalculated a simple truth. Sometimes, intelligence wasn't enough. Sometimes, people valued kindness more. Late that night, as Elon scrolled through endless discussions about him, his phone buzzed again. A new direct message. From Keanu. People don't always remember what you build. But they always remember how you made them feel. Elon stared at the message, his fingers tightening around the phone. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure what his next move should be. And for a man who had always prided himself on being 10 steps ahead, that was the most unsettling feeling of all. Elon's grip on his phone tightened as he read Keanu's message again. His mind raced, analyzing every word, every possible angle. It wasn't just a message, it was a statement, a reminder, maybe even a challenge. And that made something inside him stir. For years, he had been the disruptor, the one flipping the script, making the world react to him. Now, for the first time, he was the one on the defensive, the one being defined by someone else's words. That wasn't a position he was used to, and he didn't like it. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his communications director. Elon, we have a problem. A link followed. Another article. Another headline. Former SpaceX and Tesla employees speak out, the reality of working under Musk. Elon clicked the link, scanning the contents. It was a collection of anonymous interviews, quotes from people who had worked under him, some praising his vision, others describing an unforgiving, almost impossible work environment. Long hours, intense pressure, the expectation to deliver beyond human limits. Nothing new. But this time, the context had changed. The internet was no longer just debating Musk versus Keanu. Now, it had evolved into something much bigger. It had become a discussion about leadership, legacy, and the cost of ambition. Elon set his phone down and exhaled. His instinct was to push back, to fire off a response, to remind the world that progress wasn't built on comfort. But he hesitated. He had learned long ago that in moments like this, the wrong move could turn a spark into an inferno. Then, a new notification appeared on his screen. A video. Not from Keanu. Not from the media. From someone he hadn't heard from in years. The video started simply, a dimly lit room, a man sitting in front of a camera, his face partially shadowed. Then, a voice. I used to work for Elon Musk. And there's something people need to understand. The internet exploded. Within minutes, the video was everywhere. The man, an ex-Tesla engineer, spoke in a calm, measured tone, recounting his time working under Musk. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. But his words carried weight. Elon is one of the smartest people I've ever met. But here's the thing about genius, it can be blind to its own flaws. The video wasn't an attack. It was something more dangerous. It was honest. And honesty had a way of cutting deeper than criticism ever could. Musk felt the walls closing in. Meanwhile, Keanu had stayed silent. He hadn't responded to the latest headlines. He hadn't commented on the viral discussions. But that silence only made his presence stronger. People were waiting. Watching. And Elon knew, in that moment, that the next move wasn't just about damage control. It was about what kind of man the world would see him as when this was all over. Elon stared at the screen, his mind racing. The video was gaining millions of views by the hour, flooding every platform, every discussion. But it wasn't just the ex-Tesla engineer's words that shook him, it was the way people were reacting. They weren't angry. They weren't calling for his downfall. They were simply questioning. For the first time, they weren't just admiring his achievements. They were asking what they meant. He had always believed that progress required sacrifice. That disruption didn't happen without breaking a few norms, without demanding more than what seemed possible. But now, that belief was being held under a microscope, and he wasn't sure he liked what people were seeing. His phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, it wasn't from Keanu. It was from an old friend, someone who had been there in the early days, back when Tesla was just an idea, back when SpaceX was fighting to launch a single rocket. You've always been the smartest guy in the room, Elon. But maybe it's time to stop proving that, and start listening instead. Elon exhaled slowly. He had built his entire legacy on pushing forward, on ignoring the noise, on proving the doubters wrong. But what if, this time, he wasn't supposed to fight back? What if, this time, the world wasn't looking for an argument? What if they were looking for something else? He opened Twitter. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. His team had already prepared a statement, something safe, something controlled. But for the first time in a long time, he ignored their script. Instead, he typed something else. I've spent my life chasing the future. Maybe it's time I stop and think about the present. Then, without overanalyzing, without calculating, he hit send. The internet went silent for a moment. Then, it erupted. Some called it a surrender. Others saw it as something different, an acknowledgement, a shift. But the biggest reaction came from Keanu himself. A single reply. That's a good place to start. The moment wasn't explosive. It wasn't a dramatic victory or a crushing defeat. But it was something more powerful. It was a pause. A breath. A recognition that even the most brilliant minds had room to grow. Elon leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. He had spent his whole life controlling narratives, bending conversations to his will. And yet, in this moment, the smartest move he had made was letting go. The hours that followed felt different. The usual flood of reactions, arguments, and debates filled social media, but this time, the energy had shifted. Elon had expected backlash, maybe even ridicule, but instead, there was something else. A moment of reflection. People weren't attacking him anymore. They were discussing, breaking down his words, wondering if this was a turning point. Was it a carefully calculated move, or was it genuine? Some believed it was strategic, a way to regain control of the narrative. Others saw it as something more rare, an admission, a realization from a man who had spent his life always looking ahead, never stopping to see where he actually was. Keanu didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. His last message had been enough. The world filled in the blanks. In the days that followed, Elon continued to watch the conversations unfold. His name was still trending, but this time, not as a punchline or a target. People were dissecting his career, looking back at the moments where his genius had shined and the moments where, perhaps, he had lost sight of the human element. Interviews surfaced with employees, both past and present. Some defended him, calling him a visionary who pushed them beyond their limits in ways they never thought possible. Others spoke about the cost of that vision, the toll it took on the people who helped build it. And in all of it, Elon saw something he hadn't really considered before. His impact wasn't just in the cars, the rockets, the AI, or the grand ideas. It was in the way people felt about what he built. A few days later, in a rare move, he scheduled a live stream. No PR team, no pre-approved talking points. Just him, sitting in front of the camera, speaking directly to the people who had followed his journey. He started simply. I've always believed in pushing boundaries, in going beyond what people think is possible. But I think, in doing that, I've sometimes overlooked something important. It's not just about what we build. It's about the people who build it. The people who live with it. He paused, letting his words settle. Keanu said something that stuck with me. That respect doesn't cost anything. And maybe, in my pursuit of the future, I haven't always given enough of it in the present. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But it was something close. An acknowledgement. A rare moment of humility from a man who was known for being anything but. The reaction was immediate. Some people praised him, calling it a moment of growth. Others remained skeptical, waiting to see if his words would translate into action. But no one could deny that it was different. Keanu didn't respond publicly. Instead, a quiet rumor spread that the two had spoken privately, away from the spotlight. Whether it was true or not, no one knew. But somehow, it felt right. In the weeks that followed, the internet moved on, as it always did. Another controversy, another trending moment took center stage. But something had shifted. The conversation wasn't just about Elon Musk or Keanu Reeves anymore. It was about something bigger. What does success really mean if people don't respect the person behind it? How do we balance ambition with empathy? And in a world constantly pushing forward, how often do we stop to appreciate where we are? For Elon, things didn't change overnight. He was still the same man, still pushing, still innovating. But there was a slight difference now. A pause before he spoke. A recognition that sometimes, listening mattered just as much as leading. And for the rest of the world, it was a reminder that even the most brilliant minds still had lessons to learn.